My name is Lucas, and I'm 24 years old. For the past 4 years, I've been stuck in a situation that most people wouldn't believe unless they lived it themselves. I work for my mom and stepfather in a business that, on paper, belongs to them, but in reality, it's been running almost entirely on my shoulders. I do the work. I manage the clients. I keep everything moving. And in return, they pay me scraps, barely enough to survive, while they reap the rewards. It wasn't always like this. When I was younger, I had dreams of doing something on my own, maybe starting a business, maybe just working for someone who appreciated me. But my stepfather, Mark, always had a way of keeping me under his thumb. He's the kind of man who can convince you that you're worthless while making you believe he's doing you a favor. He's not just controlling, he's a master manipulator. He knows exactly what to say to make you feel like you have no other options but to stay. And my mom? She's just like him. It started small. After high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. College didn't seem like the right path, and I wasn't keen on jumping into some random 9-to-5 job I'd hate. That's when Mark swooped in, acting like the generous, wise stepfather who had my best interests at heart. He told me I didn't need to waste money on school when he and my mom could give me a real opportunity in their business. At first, it sounded reasonable. I'd learn hands-on skills, get experience, and be part of something that, according to them, would one day be mine to inherit. That was the hook, and I took it. But as the months went by, I realized how deep I was in. I wasn't just helping, I was the backbone of the business. Mark made big decisions, sure, but I was the one who made them work. I handled everything behind the scenes, the technical work, the client relations, the day-to-day grind. And yet, my paychecks were laughable. "We can't afford to give you more right now," Mark would say, even though I watched them go on expensive vacations and buy new cars. "It's all an investment in your future," my mom would add. I believed them for a while. But the real kicker? The way they treated me. Mark would belittle me constantly, always finding a way to make me feel incompetent despite the fact that he relied on me. Any mistake, no matter how small, became an excuse for him to rant about how I was lucky to even have this job. My mom would either laugh along with him or sit there silently, never once standing up for me. And then there was the last family gathering. It was a small get-together, just close relatives. We were sitting around the table, and someone casually asked me how work was going. Before I could even answer, Mark scoffed. "Work? You mean all the free handouts we give him? Lucas is a waste of space. If it weren't for me, he wouldn't last a day out there." The words hit like a punch to the stomach, but what hurt more was my mom's reaction. She laughed. Not even an awkward chuckle, full-on, genuine amusement. Like what he said was the funniest thing she'd heard all day. Something snapped in me at that moment. I had spent 4 years grinding for them, taking their insults, letting them dictate my future because they convinced me I had no choice. But I did. I always did. I barely spoke for the rest of the gathering. Just nodded, smiled when necessary, kept my head down. But inside, I was done. That night, I made a plan. For months, I had been toying with an idea in the back of my mind, starting my own business. I knew the ins and outs of this industry better than anyone. I knew the clients, the market, the demand. I had the skills, the connections, everything I needed. The only thing stopping me was them. But they weren't stopping me anymore. I spent the next week preparing in silence. I reached out to a few trusted clients, ones I had built strong relationships with over the years. I didn't badmouth Mark or my mom. I didn't need to. I just let them know I was considering a new opportunity and asked if they'd be interested in working with me directly if I ever made the jump. The responses were overwhelmingly positive. By the end of the week, I had everything lined up. I drafted a letter, not emotional, not angry, just factual. I explained that I was leaving, effective immediately. I had already removed my belongings from the office. I had no intention of returning. I thanked them for the experience and made it clear that I would be competing against them from now on. I placed the letter in an envelope. That evening, when Mark and my mom were sitting in the living room, laughing about something on TV, I walked in. I didn't say anything at first. Just stood there. Mark glanced at me, already looking annoyed. "What do you want?" I didn't answer. I just stepped forward, set the envelope on the coffee table in front of them, and turned to leave. I could already hear Mark tearing it open behind me. The moment he started reading, his voice rose. "What is this?" I didn't stop walking. I grabbed my keys, stepped out the front door, and shut it behind me. I knew exactly what was about to happen next. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. I walked to my car, not in a rush, not looking back. I could hear Mark's voice rising behind me, muffled by the walls, but I didn't care. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled out of the driveway like it was any other day. But it wasn't. It was the last time I would ever live under their roof. The moment I turned onto the main road, my phone buzzed. I didn't need to check it to know who it was. First, it would be my mom. Then Mark. Then a storm of messages, calls, voicemails filled with anger, disbelief, maybe even threats. I ignored all of them. I had rented a small apartment across town, nothing fancy, just enough to get started. I had signed the lease earlier that week, using the last of my savings for the deposit. It was a risk, but it was mine. For the first time in my life, I had something that was mine. I parked, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. The place was empty except for a mattress on the floor and a few boxes of my things. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. I sat down and finally checked my phone. 26 missed calls. The messages were exactly what I expected. Mom texted, "Lucas, what is this? What are you talking about? This isn't funny. Call me now." Mark texted, "You ungrateful little brat. You think you can just walk away? You have no idea what you're doing. Call me now." Mom texted, "Sweetie, just come home and we'll talk about this. You're being irrational." Mark texted, "You think you can steal from me? You owe us everything. You better fix this before it's too late." I smirked. Steal? I hadn't taken a dime from them. The business was still theirs. I had simply walked away. But they knew. They knew exactly what was coming. I put my phone on silent. The next morning, I got up early, made coffee, and sat down at my laptop. It was time to launch my business. The beauty of it was that I didn't need much, just a website, an email, and a few phone calls. I had spent years doing all the work anyway, so transitioning to my own company was seamless. By noon, I had already secured my first few clients. People who had worked with me before, people who trusted me, not my mom, not Mark. By the end of the week, I had more work than I could handle alone. And by the end of the month, Mark and my mom's business was crumbling. The calls and messages never stopped. They went through phases, first rage, then panic, then desperation. Mark tried threatening legal action, but he had nothing. I hadn't stolen clients. They had left him willingly. My mom tried guilt-tripping me, sending long, teary messages about how I was breaking the family apart. I didn't respond to any of them. Then, one day, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "He's losing everything." It was my aunt, one of the few family members who had always been on my side, even when she stayed silent. I stared at the message, feeling nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction. Just a quiet understanding. Mark had spent years controlling me, belittling me, making me feel like I was nothing without him. But the truth was, he was nothing without me. And now, he was finally realizing it. A week passed before I heard anything more. I had settled into my new routine, working late nights, taking on new clients, watching my bank account finally start to grow on my own terms. My apartment was still bare, but it felt more like home than that house ever did. Then, one evening, as I was answering emails, my phone lit up with a new message from my aunt. "They're desperate. Your mom called me crying. Mark's losing his mind." I exhaled slowly, rolling my shoulders back. I had expected this. Their business was failing, just like I knew it would. Without me, there was no one to handle the real work, the clients, the logistics, the systems I had built from scratch while they took all the credit. They had assumed I was replaceable, that I would come crawling back, that I needed them more than they needed me. They were wrong. I typed a quick reply. "Not my problem." A few minutes later, she responded, "I know. Just wanted you to know what's happening." I stared at my phone, considering my next move. I wasn't interested in gloating. I had no desire to drive past their office just to see the lights off and the closed sign in the window. That wasn't my style. I just wanted them out of my life. And yet, I knew them. They wouldn't go down quietly. 2 days later, I got my answer. It was late when the knock came at my door, sharp, impatient. I glanced at the time. Almost midnight. My stomach twisted. I had a feeling I already knew who it was. I approached the door slowly, pressing my eye to the peephole. My mother. She looked disheveled, her usually neat hair a mess, her lips pressed into a thin line. She knocked again, harder this time. I hesitated. Every part of me screamed not to open it. I should have ignored her the way I had ignored her messages, let her stand there and realize that she no longer had power over me. But something made me open the door. I didn't speak. I just looked at her. She exhaled sharply, her eyes darting past me to the empty apartment behind me. "So this is where you're living now," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "This is what you threw your family away for?" I leaned against the doorframe. "What do you want, Mom?" She blinked, as if surprised I wasn't immediately caving. "I came to talk some sense into you." I gave a short, humorless laugh. "You mean guilt me into coming back?" Her lips tightened. "You don't understand what you've done. Marcus, I don't care about Mark." My voice was flat, cold. She flinched, just barely. "You should. He's your stepfather. He gave you a job. He gave you a home." I exhaled through my nose. "No, he took from me. He used me. And so did you." "That's not true." I tilted my head. "Really? So you didn't laugh when he called me a waste of space in front of the entire family?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time in my life, I saw something in her face that wasn't just manipulation or forced concern. It was uncertainty, maybe even regret. I didn't let it sway me. "I'm not coming back, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "And I don't care what happens to you or Mark. You brought this on yourselves." Her hands curled into fists at her sides. "You think you're so much better than us now?" I didn't answer. She shook her head, exhaling sharply. "Fine. But when this all falls apart, don't come running back. Don't expect us to pick up the pieces when you fail." I smiled small, calm. "I won't." Then, before she could say another word, I closed the door in her face. She didn't knock again. I stood there for a long time, listening to the sound of her footsteps fading away. I half expected her to turn back, to scream through the door, to keep trying. But she didn't. And just like that, she was gone. For the first time in years, I felt truly, completely free. But something told me Mark wouldn't go down as easily. The next few weeks were quiet, almost too quiet. My mother had made her last attempt to guilt-trip me, and when she failed, she disappeared. No more messages. No more phone calls. It was like she had finally accepted I wasn't coming back. But Mark? Mark wasn't the kind of man to accept defeat. I knew he was brewing something. Then, one morning, I got a call from a former client of his, someone I had worked with personally when I was still handling everything behind the scenes. I hadn't reached out to him. I had never poached a single client. But I could tell from the tone of his voice that something was wrong. "Lucas," he said, "listen. Mark's been telling people you stole from him." I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. "Oh, has he now?" "He's saying you took confidential business files before you left. That you've been using his resources for your own gain. He's trying to scare people into not working with you." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was exactly the kind of pathetic, desperate move I expected. The client hesitated. "I don't believe him, but I thought you should know." "Thanks," I said. "I appreciate it." I ended the call and sat there for a moment, turning Mark's latest move over in my head. I could have ignored it. Let my work speak for itself. Let Mark dig his own grave. But no, this time, I wanted to make sure he didn't get back up. I started making calls of my own. One by one, I reached out to former clients, not to defend myself, not to argue, but to calmly set the record straight. I explained the situation, told them that I left with nothing but my own skills and experience, and that if Mark was trying this hard to slander me, it was probably because he knew his business was on its last legs. Most of them believed me immediately. They had seen firsthand who did the actual work and who just barked orders. A few were hesitant. So I did something Mark would never have expected. I invited them to see for themselves. I offered them a behind-the-scenes look at my new business, transparency, proof of what I was doing, how I was doing it, and how I could offer them something even better than before. And just like that, they left him. One by one, the last remaining clients of Mark's business jumped ship. Some went to other competitors, but a good chunk came to me. And with them came everything Mark feared most, his money, his reputation, his power. It wasn't long before I got the call. Not from him. From my mother. This time, I answered. "Lucas," she started, her voice shaking. "We need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window at the city below me. I already knew what she was going to say. Mark's business was finished. And now, she was looking for a way out. I let the silence stretch between us, letting her squirm on the other end of the line. "We have nothing to talk about," I finally said, my voice calm. "Lucas, please," she pleaded, the desperation creeping into her voice. "Mark he's not handling this well. We're losing everything. The house, the business. We just need a little help." I almost laughed. A little help? After years of treating me like I was disposable? After using me, underpaying me, taking credit for my work, and tossing me aside when they thought I had no other options? I felt nothing but cold detachment. "You mean you need money?" I said flatly. She hesitated. "It's not like that. It is exactly like that." Another long silence. Then her tone shifted. The pitiful act dropped, replaced by something sharper. "You wouldn't even have your business if it weren't for us." There it was. The last desperate grasp at control. The attempt to rewrite history. "You're right," I said, surprising even myself. "If it weren't for you, I never would have learned how to build something from the ground up while someone else took the credit. I never would have learned how to work twice as hard for half the pay. And I never would have learned how to recognize people who only see me as a resource to exploit." Her breath hitched. "Lucas, I owe you nothing," I said, my voice as steady as steel. "And I don't ever want to hear from you again." I ended the call. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. But I should have known they wouldn't leave it at that. 2 days later, the pounding at my door came like an earthquake. It was close to midnight. I had just finished up work for the night when the knocking started, loud, insistent, desperate. I knew who it was before I even looked. I took my time walking to the door, exhaling slowly as I peered through the peephole. Mark. And my mother. She looked pale, her face gaunt with stress. Mark, on the other hand, looked furious. His jaw was clenched, his eyes wild, his hands balled into fists at his sides. I didn't open the door. "Lucas," Mark bellowed, his voice thick with rage. "You think you can just walk away from family? After everything we've done for you?" I stared at them through the peephole, completely calm. My mother stepped forward, her voice softer. "Please, baby. We have nowhere else to go. A few months ago, that might have worked. A few months ago, I might have hesitated. But now?" I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel anything. I spoke through the door, my voice firm. "You need to leave." Mark let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, you think you're better than us now? Because you've got a little money in your pocket? You wouldn't be anything without me." I leaned against the door frame, exhaling. "And yet, here you are, on my doorstep, with nothing." His breath hitched. My mother whimpered beside him. And then, with the weight of years behind me, I said the words that sealed everything shut. "I am done with you. Both of you. Don't call me. Don't come here. Don't even say my name." Mark let out a strangled curse, slamming his fist against the door. "You ungrateful little." I locked the deadbolt. And then, without another word, I walked away. Their voices faded into the night, their shouts growing weaker as I sat down on my couch, letting the silence wash over me. For the first time in my life, I had nothing to fear. No guilt. No obligations. No chains tying me to people who never truly cared. I was free. And they? They were nothing without me. I wish I could say that was the last time I heard from them, that after that night, they finally accepted the consequences of their actions and slinked away into the oblivion they had earned. But people like Mark and my mother don't go down without a fight. The calls started again, first from random numbers, then from mutual acquaintances, old family friends, distant relatives I barely remembered. Every single one of them carried the same message: "Your mother is struggling. She's so heartbroken. Can't you just forgive her?" I ignored every single one. But Mark? He took a different approach. A few weeks after the night at my door, I woke up to an email from an unknown sender. No subject line, just a single attachment, a scanned legal document. A lawsuit. Mark was suing me for theft of intellectual property, defamation, and breach of contract. I actually laughed. Out loud. The man had nothing left, and this was his last pathetic attempt at taking me down with him. But the best part? He didn't have a case. Not even close. I had left everything behind when I walked away. The clients who came to me did so of their own free will. I never poached, never stole anything, never even looked back at whatever files I had once worked on. But he was hoping to scare me, hoping I would settle, maybe throw some money his way just to make it go away. I didn't. Instead, I forwarded the email to my lawyer, a real lawyer, not whatever bargain bin attorney Mark had scraped together with his last few dollars. Within days, the lawsuit was thrown out for lack of merit. But it got better. Mark had no money left to pay for legal fees. And because he had filed such a baseless case, the court ordered him to pay my legal expenses. It was the final nail in the coffin. From what I later heard, that was the moment my mother finally broke. The house? Gone. The business? Nothing but a hollow shell, abandoned by every client they once had. And Mark? He disappeared. No job, no business, no power, and, if the rumors were true, no wife. Because my mother finally saw him for what he was, a parasite who had latched onto me for years and drained me dry. And when I was gone, he tried to drain her, too. But it was too late for her. She tried reaching out one last time. She showed up at my office, looking frail, thinner than I had ever seen her. She was wearing an old coat I hadn't seen in years, her hair unkempt, her eyes hollow. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please." I looked at her, truly looked at her, and felt nothing. Not hatred, not anger, just nothing. "You made your choice," I said. Her lip trembled. I was scared. I shook my head. "You laughed. When he called me a waste of space, you laughed." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean, but you did. And you meant every time you let him treat me like dirt. Every time you let him take advantage of me. Every time you chose him over your own son." She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her finish. "You only miss me now because you have nothing left," I said, voice steady. "And that's not my problem." I turned my back on her and walked away. She didn't follow. And that was the last time I ever saw her. It's been a year since then. My business is thriving. I have a real team now, people who respect me, who work with me instead of trying to control me. I set my own hours. I answer to no one but myself. And my mother and Mark? I don't know. I don't care. Some say Mark is working odd jobs, barely scraping by. Others say my mother tried to rebuild her life somewhere else, but without money, without Mark, she had nothing to stand on. Either way, they're ghosts of a past I've long since buried. And I've never been happier. What do you think, Reddit? Would you have forgiven them? Or did they deserve everything they got?